Hello, dear friends. In this short video, I want to explain to you, maybe even show you, what kinds of psychology exist. There are two main directions in psychology. There is strategic psychology. This is my opinion, my perspective, and there is depth psychology. By strategic psychology, I don't mean strategic psychotherapy. There is such a field, but that's not what I'm talking about. Strategic psychology addresses the specific request that a person comes in with. Or you ask a question on the internet and you immediately get a solution. What actions to take, what to say, how to behave. For example, the manipulation falls entirely within this direction. So if you are learning how to manipulate another person, that's strategic psychology. How to respond to someone, how to act, what exactly needs to be done, to be carried out right now, that's strategy. They show you what needs to be done, and off you go. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. For example, it doesn't work in cases of anxiety, when someone has chronic anxiety, and they're told, oh, just calm down, you're worrying over nothing. It's all nonsense, it doesn't exist. It's all just, well, it's a delusional state, it's all in your head. Does this work? No, it doesn't work. Here, unfortunately, strategic psychology doesn't work. It also doesn't work in cases of depression. When someone comes in with depression, they're completely despondent, detached, they feel sadness, sorrow, in short, all the symptoms of depression. What should you do? Well, don't be discouraged. Distract yourself. Switch your focus to something else. You need to run. You need to exercise. You need to push through it. That's strategic psychology. If you've broken up, then what should you do? You need to go no contact, yes, especially if you want to get the person back. You need to ignore the person. You need to act a certain way, respond a certain way, look a certain way, write messages a certain way, or not write at all. This all falls under strategic psychology. Does it work? Yes, it works. But deep psychology addresses questions that are more serious. Not just serious, but studied on a deeper level. Even the topic of breakups. Why are you going through this? Why do you want to get this person back? It's not just about answering these questions, but also looking for the reasons. Maybe it stems from your childhood, or maybe from previous breakups where these issues weren't resolved. Maybe you are in a certain position. Where does this position come from? Where else was there such a position? This process of exploration is what deep psychology is all about. But in my opinion, besides studying, it is necessary to apply psychotherapy. Especially in deep psychology, it's not enough just to find the cause. Let's say you discovered that in your childhood, your mother treated you the same way as your partner does now, or your father treated you like your partner does. What have you done? So you understand the cause, and here many deep psychologists stop and say that knowing the cause or gaining insight into this very cause, understanding that key situation, that already leads to a solution. It doesn't lead to a solution, on the contrary. Most often it can make things worse, because not only are you suffering because of your partner, now you'll also suffer from the information that has surfaced from your subconscious into your awareness, that your mother did this to you in childhood. So now you might have even more resentment, disappointment, and other grievances toward your mother. Did it help? It didn't help. You need to solve it. So how do you solve it? This is where deep psychotherapy comes into play. You could call it deep psychotherapy, but in this case, deep psychology is more appropriate, as it involves searching for the mechanisms or mental processes that lie in the subconscious. You study it, and then you need to work through it further. That's why, when you choose a psychologist or receive a recommendation, always ask yourself, is this recommendation strategic or is it deep? In other words, does it lead you to deep processing, to getting rid of this cause, of this mechanism once and for all? Or maybe not once, but repeatedly. But the point is for you to get rid of it, for this mechanism to diminish. For example, the same patterns that you repeat from one relationship to another. Where do they originate from? Well, strategic psychology won't answer that. Do you know what strategic psychology does say? If you don't like the relationship, if you've already told the person several times what you want and they still don't do it, you end the relationship. In principle, it seems like it saves time and resources. Good advice. Leave one relationship, enter another. A similar pattern. You leave again. Another relationship. You leave again. What's going on? Why does this pattern keep repeating? Depth psychology will answer that. Because in your childhood, you had a similar pattern with your mother or father. What should you do? You need to go into these childhood scenarios and work through them there. Erase your reactions to these scenarios, to your parents' behavior. You can also modify your experience by erasing. There's a video on my channel about this topic. And that's why, in my opinion, depth psychology really should take up more of your attention, especially for those who genuinely want to study themselves and change themselves rather than just adapting through behavior or by changing their reactions. For example, you can also consciously change your reaction. So before you used to feel anxious, but now that anxiety disappears and you just don't care. Everything is as it is. Everything happens as it happens. You can even slip into detachment. That too could be a kind of recommendation. Just stop caring about other people's attention. How's your self-esteem? Do you feel shame? Why do you even need to use shame? You use indifference instead. Who cares what they think over there? This is strategic psychology. It works for some people and for others it doesn't. Well, if it worked, that's good. But that doesn't mean that the previous mechanism, shame, has disappeared. It's just been replaced by something more advantageous. In my opinion, you need to go into that substitute mechanism and destroy it so that it's gone. That's all. In other words, it's a program you acquired during the process of forming your personality. In my opinion, depth psychology should be more encouraged than strategic psychology. Of course, strategic psychology is simpler, much simpler. What's there to it? You come in, get a recommendation. If it works, that's good. If it doesn't, well, okay. Depth psychology is harder because you have to find the issue, then work through it and figure out which methods to use for that. That's a whole different story.